And now we'll have almost 1 hour long interesting panel. And I missed it. Okay. So, okay, I lost my page. Yes, so the case for custom, and you will discover what they mean by that. And Justin Barnett is going to be the moderator, and so enjoy it. And we have 10 minutes of questions at the end.
Hello, hello. Welcome to our talk about the case for custom, the ability to, why you should jump ship from a custom application or not. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. We have a really good panel of business people and creatives and research and a lot of really good, interesting conversation about to happen for you. So I'll let each one of the panelists go through and introduce themselves really quick, and then we can jump into more specific conversations. You want to go, Rob?
I'll go first. I'm Robert Nelson. Hi, everybody. I'm with SIA Partners. It's a global management consulting firm, and I run the global XR practice. I've been a lifelong evangelist for XR and spatial computing since the mid-90s. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the work that we're doing in the custom space, especially across enterprise.
Hi, everyone. I'm Athena Demos. I'm the CEO of Big Rock Creative. Thank you. I had a big day yesterday.
Yay!
We won an Augie yesterday, and then the XR women earlier gave me Trailblazer of the Year. So it's very exciting.
We're not worthy.
We build XR communities. We build experiences that build community. And we most famously are for building BCVR, which is an official virtual Burning Man experience, which you can experience in the playground until 3 o'clock today. So right after this, head over there. We're all about radical inclusivity. We're all about creating spaces that are welcoming to everyone, from the participant to the developer. And you have to not have a walled garden in order to do that.
Hello, I'm Dr. Angelina Dayton, and I am the Executive Director of the Virtual World Society. The Virtual World Society was created by Dr. Thomas Furness, who is the grandfather of virtual reality. He created virtual reality back in the 1960s for the United States Air Force, and I'm not saying aliens, but aliens. That's what I think. And I'm known also as the VR lady. I do deployments in rural communities, mostly on Native American reservations in the United States and abroad, where I bring virtual reality to the masses. And I got that moniker because when I would take it to schools and I'd have my big bag rolling behind me, the children would come out to the play yard and yell, "The VR lady's here, the VR lady's here." And not one of them know my name is Angelina. Because it's just like when you become a mom, you become like Tina's mom and you're no longer Angelina. It's the same thing. And so the Virtual World Society is about making the world a better place through technology and understanding humanity first. And so it's a pleasure to be on this panel.
Hi, I'm Daniel Sisson. I'm the CEO of Spatial Ape, and we're a VR game developer collective, and we're working on a software product called Foundry. Foundry is a software toolkit for Unity that allows companies, organizations, developers, hackers, and enterprises to build their own custom networked multiplayer virtual reality experiences. And we have a demo in the expo hall, but actually the Burning Man demo is also running on Foundry, so I think it's a better experience. Obviously, it's an award-winning experience. But so go check out theirs, and you'll see what Foundry is enabling. And we've enabled a number of organizations from MIT Reality Hackathon, hacker groups, all the way through to multinational banks that are some of the largest banks in the world, which is pretty incredible. And Justin and I started the company not too long ago, and we've been hacking at it for maybe 8 months now. And so a lot of progress in the last 8 months. Yeah.
Very nice. Yep. So I forgot to mention that me and Daniel have started a company together, and you'll most likely be hearing a lot more about that as we progress through this panel. But let's start with Athena. You have had experience with fully custom multiplayer experiences and also using existing tools out there. Can you give us a little bit of background about what your Big Rock Creative company has experienced over the last, I guess, year or so?
Yeah, absolutely. We have definitely built on top of what would be considered walled gardens, which is this built on top of another platform that isn't interoperable with any other platform. It is its own entity. And we've done this a few times. Sometimes we do it for, one platform is super accessible. We built a lot on AltSpace, God rest its soul. But it was, in our opinion, one of the most accessible platforms, but still a walled garden. You couldn't take your assets anywhere. And that was a problem because when the platform went away and you built on this platform and then they decided to sunset it, it was like, oh my God, all my art is going away. All the time and energy I put into it is going away because it was walled and it was like their tools. And so you were stuck losing it all. When you have something that's more open, you have the ability to share assets. You have the ability, we built everything using Unity. So we didn't lose anything. We were able to take our assets, although there were certain shaders and certain code things like MREs that we created in World, those are just gone. And our avatars and our identity is just gone. But having something that's open source gives you autonomy over your art, gives you the ability to share it in more than one place. We have built on top of Foundry. We have built on Spatial. In fact, we have an event on Sunday, because I'm a glutton for taking on as much as I can during AWE. But we have an event on Sunday called the Desert Arts Preview, which is in partnership with the Burning Man organization, to showcase 50 of the pieces that are going to Burning Man in 2023. The artists will be there to talk to people. And we wanted a platform that was super easy to get to. Click a link, browser-based, available on your phone, also app-based in your VR headset. Spatial is it, or Rec Room. But again, they're walled gardens. They're you can't go from one to another. And every company, every corporation that we've worked with, they're like, well, yeah, you can build on top of this, but can't we just have it on our website? And that's what they want. So that's what we're moving towards. Everybody has their own website. How many people here have their own website? Right. You have your own space. You have your own shingle that is uniquely you. You should have your own spatial space. Not spatial, the platform, but your own spatial computing space, your own three-dimensional space that is yours as well, but interoperable with everything else that is out on the internet that also has a spatial space.
Athena, talk about feeling like a refugee when AltSpace closed. Because really, when you talk about having your own, I work with a lot of tribal nations, having your own land, your own place, how that's tied to identity. Talk a little bit about, you called yourself a
refugee.
Yeah, talk about it.
I didn't think I would feel this way. I was like, oh, it's just a platform. But it was where the community was. It's where all my friends were. It's where we connected. It's where we came together. It's where we shared moments. It's where we cried together. Crying in a headset is super difficult. They all collects into the foam, and then you break out. But we have cried together. We created a temple where people mourned those that they had lost during COVID. It was very moving. I've been to weddings. I've been to memorials. I've been to celebrations. I delivered a eulogy for the AltSpace platform on the AltSpace platform the single moment before they pulled the plug. And then I went on other platforms looking for everyone. But we looked different because the avatars were gone and our identity got wiped away. And our land got taken from us. And the places that we lived and our homes that we decorated, all in a blink of an eye, in 8 seconds, just went to black. And it was gone. And now when I'm on VR Chat or Engage or Spatial or Rec Room, I've jumped on them all. I've toured over 50 platforms. I put ASVR in my name so people know that I came from AltSpace. And when people see that, they come over to me like, oh my God, I was on Altspace too. And it's like two people from a different country finding each other in a land that's not their own.
It is. It's a diaspora. It's the ASVR diaspora.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guarantee that Microsoft had no idea what they were doing when they did, what the ramifications of their actions were going to be. And I think they lost a lot of trust from the creator community. We created a lot on that platform in 10 years, and it's just gone.
So that's why we made this panel.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right.
You can't allow the big companies to control your art and your life and your being. It's yours.
Yeah.
I think another interesting part of it is that it's not exactly your user database. Like when you're building your community on a platform that's somebody else's platform, you're building up their user database. You're building user acquisition for them and not for yourself. And this is one of those things that one of the metaphors I like to use is you mentioned the website metaphor, and I really like that one because it's like you could technically speaking run your entire business off of a LinkedIn group or something like that. You could say, hey, no, we don't have a website. Just go to linkedin.com/spatial app, and you'll go to and sure you could, but nobody would do that. It makes no sense. Like then they're not your users, they're not your emails. It's all inside LinkedIn's platform. The same thing for mobile apps. You could say, oh, we don't have a mobile app. Just download the Facebook mobile app and then go to this thing inside Facebook. And those two examples of running your business on a LinkedIn group or using Facebook for your mobile app are ludicrous. Like it makes absolutely no sense. But why, when it comes to virtual reality, is that what we do? Like that's what we're currently doing, and that's what almost everybody is doing, whether it's an art community or whether it's a business. And like no shade on some of the larger consulting firms, not you, Rob, but some of the other large consulting firms.
All right, good.
But in the Meta Connect presentation, I think it was this last fall, there was a large consulting firm that talked about bringing thousands of enterprises into the metaverse, and I remember looking at it and saying, oh, those are Altspace avatars. So they're like, no, you brought a bunch of people into a platform and that's it, but they're not actually enabled to run their own business in the metaverse in their own way, and it's not their users.
Yep.
It's not empowering.
No.
Like if you think of like some of our clients are large corporations, and we want to empower them to have their own space. And if they're on somebody else's platform, they don't feel empowered to bring their community there. They're like, okay, yeah, great, I have this beautiful space. And then they're not as incentivized to bring people to their own space. We created a stadium for the European Cricket Network. And we did a championship game, and people showed up, and it was really great. And then after that, I was like, you guys, we should keep using the world. And they're like, well, can we actually get it on our servers? I was like, well, yeah, we'll do, yeah. And so now we have to go to that next level and build it out on their servers. But it was that mindset of that they were just built on another platform. And of course, we built it on Altspace.
And from an adoption standpoint, and we talked about when this whole expo kicked off, everything all the time, everywhere in XR. How do we do that if we don't feel like a sense of ownership? And how does enterprise do that? Right? How do they take a first step if the content they produce ultimately isn't going to be theirs at the end of the day? It makes that whole adoption dynamic very, very challenging. And I'm really happy we started with your story, because it's sort of it's a highlight of a pitfall that we really can avoid now, thanks to understanding what these like large institutions that run these walled gardens really have in terms of a commitment to XR long term. I think there's a lot of people looking at Microsoft right now thinking, what else is not going to be supported in 6 months? And maybe it makes more sense to start building the muscle memory in my own business as opposed to relying on other companies to do that. And the challenge there is what it takes to deliver these experiences is so different than a normal IT organization and the talent they've got in-house. It takes a massive change and management effort just to realize what it's going to be down the road. So I'm so sorry about what happened to AltSpace and the diaspora there. I was also a longtime AltSpace user. We loved AltSpace. But if there's anything, if there's a silver lining, I think, to this cloud, it's that we have to carry ourselves forward, and we can't rely on those platforms to do it for us. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit about Foundry, which SIA Partners has been using extensively, because I think it's one of the mechanisms that allows us to do that very effectively.
And I wanted to say the Virtual World Society hosted a breakfast yesterday morning, and we had the top C-class, C-level people there from, NVIDIA and Niantic, and they are great people, and they've been in the industry a long time, and they've either been a student of Tom Furness, our founder, or they had like minds and like visions, but they work for these large organizations like Microsoft, and they talked about the industry, and they were talking about interoperability, and they were talking about, is it the headset, is it the battery life? And Tom sat in the back, and he was very quiet the entire hour and a half. And at the end, the facilitator, one of our board members was facilitating. She said, "What do you think, Tom?" And Tom said, "We missed that this technology can make us better people." So when you say, why did they sunset it? It's because Tom wasn't in the room, right? They are looking at things that are important from a business standpoint, but I think if we're not constantly having those conversations with them to say, I don't think you know what you're going to do to the people that loved this space. I don't think when you want the mass adoption, you want the large-scale deployment, you want us to love this, but you need to take care of us. And I think we should be moving to other platforms. And part of the reason is because, or creating our own platforms is part of the reason is because with all those layers of complexity, they forget the humanity part sometimes. And we need to be creating systems with that conversation constantly happening. And so, Tom, you missed it. I just brought you up and said how wonderful you were. He's walking in right now. So I think that they're open to hearing that, but we need to be on the stage talking about it so that they know what's really happening on the ground. Like they say the Starbucks CEO goes and serves coffee. They need to come into these platforms and feel the love and go to a wedding and go to a funeral and see what's happening and then make space for us. And we need to push the industry in that direction.
Yeah, I have no doubt that the person who made the final decision, signed off on pulling the plug on AltSpace, had never been in AltSpace. There's no way they would have even spent an hour in there and done what they did.
So Daniel, do you want to talk a little bit about Foundry, or maybe not specifically what it is yet, but your process of why did we get to this point where we had to make something custom?
Yeah, actually, we came at it from the developer angle ourselves. So I'm a self-taught developer. Started making websites back in high school and taught myself Python, and then later taught myself Unity and C# programming. And that's actually where Justin and I met. I took a boot camp, and Justin was the instructor. And I had this crazy idea that I was going to take all my XR portfolio projects and put them into a shared space and bring people in, and it would be fun. And I'd hang out with my brother and my friends and in VR and do all the things that I built. And I tried to look at all the platforms, and you can't do it. You can bring art assets in, but you can't bring in anything with custom scripts or anything like that. And so I'm not an artist. None of my stuff looked good. It was functional. And so I said, okay, I'll build it myself. And the reality is that multiplayer is not 2 or 3 times as hard as single player. Multiplayer is an order or multiple orders of magnitude more difficult than single player. And being a kind of beginner to intermediate level developer, it was borderline impossible. And that was one of the original impetus was, let's build a software product that makes this a hell of a lot easier. So that someone of my skill level, a reasonably skilled person, could more easily do this. And the thing about VR development is that it's still so early right now that sometimes the answer is not on Stack Overflow. Like you can GPT doesn't know it necessarily. Like we're still figuring this out, and ChatGPT goes through 2021, so it doesn't know. And so the idea was let's build something that gives developers a big leg up. And selfishly, I just wanted to build something for myself. And then Justin and I got the idea, yeah, let's build this thing. It's going to be awesome. Developers like us will use it. And then we found these use cases that made a ton of sense on the enterprise side of things, where they need to build their own thing so that they have control of the data. And then on the creative side, where these platforms don't always make sense, or you mature past them. And so that was the original idea, build something for myself, and then magically other people liked it, which is amazing.
Can I, just to add one thing, and you know, I think with AltSpace going away, we saw this major intangible benefit of the community piece go away with it. But there were still a lot of shortcomings even within what AltSpace could do, right? If I'm looking at the overall utility of XR, if I can't interact with what's in there, beyond that community piece, it's really, there's not a lot I can do to sort of make my life easier and, you know, make humans better, right? So there's so much, I think, ground to cover now, and with the help of a product like Foundry that allows us to now do some of that really important interactive work within the space and solve some real problems, I think, you know, in ways that are, you know, much more efficient than we would otherwise. And I heard a comment somewhere in here about, you know, Microsoft not really understanding the value of AltSpace from a business standpoint. And I would argue that, or they're looking at it only from the context of a business standpoint.
It's just numbers on a spreadsheet.
But what's interesting is, I don't actually think they're even doing that. And it's not, I'm not trying to pick on any one company, right? But I don't think they're even doing that in terms of how we interact with the technology. I mean, I think we've probably all heard the stats around training, that it's, you know, 5 times cheaper or 4 times cheaper, whatever it is, than traditional, you know, Zoom training. But that only takes into account, that's only true when you take into account the actual opportunity cost of putting a person in training, right? So even when we're looking at companies that are trying to look at, hey, maybe I want to, you know, do something custom, and they see a cost there that is astronomical compared to a Zoom training, they're not actually taking into account that opportunity cost. And that's true across almost every client, right, that I've been working with over the last, you know, 2 or 3 years on this work. And that education process, I think, is a real eye-opener. But I think the good news is that's changing, right? As you know, platforms, or, you know, platforms in a box like Foundry start to become more ubiquitous, it's driving costs down, and it's making that decision from a business standpoint much more palatable, right? Which I think helps us get to where we want to be, which is all the time, you know, everyone's using XR for the right reasons, of course.
And you make the case very well that businesses make decisions that aren't always logical, but what is the problem you're trying to solve, and does VR solve it faster, better, cheaper? And if it doesn't, then why am I doing it? But on the other side, Foundry is solving a problem, and what you are finding is that there are more use cases than you even, it's solving more problems than what you even thought it could solve when, because you were selfish at the beginning, right? You're like, I want this. Maybe other people want this, but I want this. I want a platform. And one of the things that we find working, and you know, we go into native communities and they're like, I want to scan in this asset, but when I scan it in, does Engage own it? Who owns it? Who owns that asset? And you know, I work with the native community. They have a problem with people taking their land and taking their things for themselves, their artifacts,
taking their culture,
and so so when you can own in your own platform, and you can ensure that the things that I make are mine, and nobody can take it away from me. That's another use case that's more than just Daniel wants it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, there's a massive creative use case there for artists themselves, and then on the flip side of that, there's these business use cases. So you think about defense and aerospace companies. Like, can they put a highly confidential model of a fighter jet into a platform owned by somebody else and grant that IP to that platform? No. In many cases, no. And so that's a use case that was so far outside of my mental model when I built this thing, but that makes so much sense. And so you've got, Burning Man creating art assets, and then the community being able to continue to own their own IP, and then also you have highly confidential things like fighter jet models.
Yeah, for the Burning Man community, it was the whole principle of decommodification, which takes logos and sponsorships and all the things that mar up what we're looking at and sort of scars the art and doesn't give it purity. Gifting is part of our economy. In order for a gift to be pure, you have to decommodify it. You just have to give it unconditionally without any expectation of something in return. That thing in return would be barter. That's a commodification. So one of the biggest sticking points for the Burning Man community in AltSpace was the AltSpace logo everywhere and on the load screen. And AltSpace actually understood. There were tons of burners in that company, in that division, and they completely understood. But what it would take to remove that out of their system, I mean, they would have to remove it for everyone, not just for that little pocket, the giant pocket of AltSpace that we were occupying. And so we did like shortcuts. Cause, who is here, created this flame MRE, and every time you hop from world to world, the flame would come up and it would be right in front of the logo, and you were more likely to see the flame than you were the logo. So we did whatever we could to do that.
So subversive.
But on a system like Foundry, we don't have that worry. It is for the burner community, by the burner community. And it's sitting on code that is open. It's open source. So now the community can keep iterating and working on it and making it better and making something that is for the betterment of humanity, of their pocket, of our pocket of humanity. And we're very excited to be working with Foundry.
And I think one of the things that maybe big business doesn't understand is there are traditional creatives, right? Like you are a creative, Burning Man is a creative. But the youth they create their world. They create their TikToks. They create their YouTube videos. They create the world that they live in. So the next generation does not consume. They contribute and create. And they want ownership over the things that make their identity who they are. They are not subject to. They do not want to be subject. Have you ever tried to get them to do anything? They don't listen. And so that concept of everyone is contributing or creating, and that's right now they're struggling. They say content desert. Well, there's a content desert because you're not giving us ownership over the things we create. And when you make it easy in a space for everybody to make the things that they want, if you do not dampen that creativity, you will have you will have how many hours of YouTube videos, right? People want, people want to contribute to that space. And it's not just because I'm not creative at all. I get it just by being Athena's friend. I live vicariously through her. But when I create the world I want to live in, I want that to be mine and not be taken away.
Yeah, that's one of the nice parts about these existing applications is it's relatively easy to get started, to add your content in there, and that's the appeal and the draw a lot of the time. But we were having a conversation a little bit earlier where we need more content. We have a lot of hardware, we have a really cool software, but we need more content behind it, and one of the biggest elements of achieving that is making it easier to do that. And like, how long did it take us to, after AltSpace was shut down, get you into Foundry?
1 month.
Like super fast. And
but we did all pull out our hair. There was some like the Friday before AWE, I'm like, does it work? We have a whole booth, guys.
It
Come
worked.
on.
100% worked.
It works. Go to the booth. It works.
Minor bugs.
Yeah, but I think to get there, right? There's a comment around, is there utility here? Like, is there a thing that I'm really going to do well, and do it better in VR than anywhere else? Like, I think for that to really become, an important focal point for all of us, we need to get everyone at this at this event at AWE, we need to get them to like, you know, the novel materials convention and the power and utilities convention and the banking and finance convention. We need to get this, you know, great well of ideas and this great well of capabilities out to the people that have real problems to go solve. Right, then I can start looking at 3D data solutions for wealth and asset management. I can start looking at, you know, multi-user digital twin trainings for super cheap with my wind turbines at a power and electric company. Right, like these are the types of problems that desperately need solving, and VR does have a capability to do it, or XR has a capability to do it better and cheaper and faster. But we have to actually, you know, get outside of this community, and that's been something I've been super passionate about. Is you know the sort of the cross-training between all of these industries and how they work.
And one of the comments that I made at the breakfast the other day was, we, maybe us, maybe not so much him, grew up in a mechanical age where you could break the vacuum cleaner and you would get in a lot of trouble for it. And then the digital age where like a lot of us grew up on screens, right? But the young folks are spatial. They think spatially. They think spatially in the 3D world. They're in spatial environments. More often, they use snap filters like nobody's business. And so when they move into e-commerce, or they move into oil and gas, or they move into, they're going to want those solutions to the paradigm that they work out of, and they're not going to be satisfied with the mechanical solutions, or they're going to bring that innovation in. And so we need to make the space for them to express themselves and learn that skill set so they can kick us out of the way. I used to work with educators in VR, and I ran a little group called Students in VR. Yeah, Students in VR, and they'd say, well, what do you do for the kids? And I get out of their way. What are you talking about? I give them tools and assets and get out of their way. And I think solutions are really going to come from us getting out of the way of people that think spatially, and they have that creativity, and they have that, you know, that drive, and they want to see these systems change for the better. They want to be more effective and efficient because they're lazy. They don't like working. They like 4-day weeks. They have all these great ideas, right? Like, why are we working harder? Why aren't we working smarter? And so, yeah,
that was literally going to be my. I had a two-pronged point there, and that was exactly right. Is there's this, you know, a change issue with the new technology, which is, you know, okay, I figured out what I want to build, and I've gone and built the thing, but now my workforce, they don't even know how to, you know, get into VR. Like, so there's what we call in a culture in SIA Partners, we have this whole concept of acculturation. Right, where a human being, if they're not really well versed in an XR solution, the first time they get there, they need to learn how to move around, and they need to learn, you know, how to manipulate the environment. And ultimately, they do that by they play. Yeah. Right. They're gonna, no matter who you get that's never used XR before, as soon as you put them into an XR environment, guaranteed, no matter what direction you give them, they're just gonna play around for about 30 minutes.
And I want to let you know, when we work with industry and I say you need to let them play, they say, Angelina, unstructured time is how we say it in business. But it is play. It is play.
Yeah.
Right.
We learn through play. Yeah. And that is just proven behavioral science. We learn through play.
We learn through unstructured time. Go on, Bob.
Yeah, but when I make when I make a new app in a pancake world, like for either my phone or for like a PC, right? My workforce knows how to use a PC, right? They've been doing that since they were in grade school. But this technology is so new that element, and you know, that's still about a third of users haven't entered the workforce. They're not out of the school systems yet, and we need to have that sort of institutional knowledge of how, you know, intuitively, how do I do this the right way? The other side of that is we have a little bit of an issue that's, I think, similar to what happened in the automotive industry at the turn of the last century, which is we don't have like a standardized way to interact all the time yet, right? So it took a while before the gas pedal and the clutch and the gear shifter were all in the same spot on pretty much every car. We're getting pretty close, but we're still not all the way there. And those are really, I think, you know, inhibiting adoption.
And that paradigmatic change of assembly line learning and assembly line and factory, you know, models are static. but virtual reality, emerging tech is dynamic.
Right.
And it's iterative and it's agile and that kind of thinking, right? Of
So
that our
it might be
workforce has
changing
to
on the
have.
fly, right?
Yeah,
As you
so-
learn one thing.
So they say, give me the handbook. I go, there isn't one.
Right.
Tomorrow you're going to do it a little different because the world is changing that fast. And the solutions are coming up all the time, and you can improve. There's not one right answer. And we go to school and we're like, no, there's one right answer. No, there's not. There's not now. And so really getting that change. And young people embrace it, right? Young people are all like, well, yesterday it wasn't like that, or why does that have to be like that today? Or like my kids say, well, is it the truth, or is truth relative? And I'm like, is your room clean or not? That's really like but when you talk about Foundry, I mean, if they can, my son says, I don't like commercial things. I don't like things that are trying to take my money or my time or taking away my agency. You know, you show young people the ability to have their own space, do their own thing, and they're going to gravitate towards it. You don't have to tell them twice.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for.
They get it right away. I think
Yes.
the kids fully understand spatial computing instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's like I put my daughter, she's 5 years old, and I put the headset on her. I tell them the 13-year-old thing just so I can limit their usage. And say, oh, you're supposed to be 13. This is a special treat. Shh, you know. And I put my daughter, she's 5 years old. I put her in Gorilla Tag. You don't have to explain anything. She can run. She jumps all around Gorilla Tag with no explanation needed. And to your point, they're growing up in this age of being creators. They're creating content on platforms. They're creating content for themselves. They take pictures. They make videos. They play 3D video games. When Rob and I were playing video games as kids, it was often 2D. And now these kids, I watch them on their iPads. Every single game they play is 3D. So they understand 3D and spatial intuitively, and they understand the act of creation intuitively. And there's no way you're going to get them to go build inside somebody else's platform. You need to give them the tools to be able to build their own thing.
Absolutely. If we're getting close to the end now, so if you guys have questions, there's a mic in the middle of the aisle there, so we can line up behind there, and feel free to jump in, and we can go ahead and start answering questions. Otherwise, they're just going to talk forever. So
We could do that too.
Cool. All right, so I love the platform in a box, and I get how platform in a box solves the IP ownership and the permanence problem. But my question to you is, what about the walled garden portability problem? For you people on the stage, what's your call to action for everybody that's building in this space to help make sure that we have standards so that this content can be portable, even if I build it myself, that I can go to other places where they're building for themselves as well?
Okay, so this is my shameless plug, okay? Go to virtualworldsociety.org and become a member. And this is why. Behind you, Tom, just wave. This man, Tom Furness, he began the organization because he created virtual reality in the 1960s. And as it evolved and it became more commercial, he saw the possibility for dystopia. There was a movie called Lawnmower Man in the 1990s. He told the story, I think on stage today, about, oh my gosh, this is what people are going to think virtual reality is, or the only possibilities. And so we began discussions with because Tom actually trained, or was in some way interacted with everybody that's in the industry now over the many years that he's been involved, and he's gathering them together regularly so that we can, because we do talk to the people at Burning Man, and we do talk to the people who build VR experiences, swimming with orcas, or whatever else that they, and then we go and we try to keep that communication so we can say, you have to spend some time in Altspace VR before you make this decision. And I told the story before you walked in, Tom, that everybody was talking, and at the end you said, yeah, but this is supposed to be making us better people, right? And so, seriously, I have swag for whoever becomes a member. It's in my bag. Chocolate, pins, T-shirts, bags. And so when you become a member, then we can reach out to you and say, what's happening? And you're going to say, Altspace is closing. What can we do? Or where are we going to go next? And we can help be the voice of the people, the pulse of the people. And we can also take the information that they're giving us and say, what do you guys really think about this? What's going to be the effect? And so, so that's one of the suggestions, the shameless plug that I'm going to make. They've been plugging Foundry the whole time, and so and Burning Man. So I'm going to plug virtualworldsociety.org. Join now.
Love it.
Also, OpenXR standards. We just need to agree. Like, let's just agree right now. Let's take this moment right now and say, we're going to agree. These are the standards. And then just build with them. And then our shit will work together.
Yep.
Like, that's just basically what it is. HTML, before HTML. Does anybody remember? Who in this room remembers pre-HTML?
I don't think
Okay, that's a
Justin
decent.
and I were not alive then.
Yeah, you weren't alive then? But it was a mess. It was a mess. And then we all were able to be together in our content. And so we're a mess right now. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can learn from what we've done in the past. We were able to make this happen in Web 2. We can do this. We know how to do this. And so it's just agreeing. This is the greatest communal effort that humanity at this point in time has ever done. And we have to build it now. It's that parable where what we're building now is planting trees that we are not going to sit under the shade of. But we need to plant those trees. And that's what we're doing.
And I would just add that we will get it wrong sometimes because remember, it's dynamic and we need to be iterative and agile and we might feel uncomfortable not having it all set out in stone perfect the first time, but the people that come after us know that things change. And so we need to start and we need to accept that it will be different in the future, but we need to start. We need to start.
And it's our job to call out when we see things that are like, nah, maybe this isn't really the way we should be doing it, and kind of adjust and adapt and be agile. And like as a developer who tries lots of things and then also tries to show people how to approach creating different applications, I try to throw my suggestions in there of like, I'm also left-handed. And so when I absolutely hate it when they just say, oh, well, you check this left-handed checkbox and it just flips all the controls, and that's not what I want. Like I still want to move always with my left hand and not just have everything be backwards. And so just like it's going to be an iterative process of us just trying it over and over again and making small tweaks over and over again until we get it right.
I just want to bring up, because that's an excellent point and a great segue. I was on a panel earlier today about accessibility. That's something else we need to build in at the very beginning, right now. Not someone has to get sued and the ADA gets involved and then they force you into adding something after the fact. We know accessibility tools. We know what they are. We've built them into our physical world. We've built them into our 2D web pages. Let's just build them in right now.
Athena.
Yeah.
I'm 4'11" and you are?
5 feet tall.
And are virtual worlds built for us?
No.
Okay,
My
did you ever know
avatar's
that?
like that big.
We have to lie and say that we are.
I say I'm 5'8".
I say I'm 5'4". And so, do people think about that? No. And here's the thing: people, when we talk about accessibility, we think, at what part of the development process is accessibility? I'm sorry, accessibility is development. It's the same thing. They're not separate, right?
Yeah.
They're not separate.
In your foundation.
Beautiful. Another question.
Yeah. So this is all great, right? Technology allows us to stream our own movie from our website, VR experiences. Fantastic. Now, I think one of the main issues for any independent content creator is visibility. There's so much noise. And so my question is, any advice on how to reach maybe 1 million views without spending $1 million in marketing?
Yeah, so this is one of the pros that exists in these platforms is the community that's already there. So I think the original premise of this was the pros and cons of going custom. This would be one of the cons, in a way, is that you don't have the built-in community automatically that you would have in the platforms like AltSpace. If you when AltSpace was going, back in its heyday, you would draft in people automatically. And the same thing applies to something like YouTube. You have this automatic community and reach. When you're going completely custom, it's like building your own website. You don't have automatic, website traffic. And so this would be one of the downsides of going completely custom is no built-in community. And now it's back to you being a traditional marketer, doing social media marketing or Twitter or YouTube or what have you to bring in your own community and users.
And a great point was made today in Tom's talk because they were talking about AI and how AI and the creator economy. And the point was made, and I hear your point that it is important if you're trying to generate revenue, and we all want to eat and pay rent. And there'll be problems if that's what you're trying to do. But what these platforms will allow is for those of us that are creating, like you did at the beginning, just because it's fun and you want to share it with, 4 people. And I think that there are pros and cons, but the pro of being able to say, I can do this just because I like it. And like Daniel said, his stuff was ugly. And not, I can imagine it's like, the single man that has just the folding chair in his living room for all of his furniture, but only in VR, right? And so, and there needs to be that space, and not that there aren't other, commercial considerations, but imagine a place where you can just create, and how we need that. And we don't need outside approval or outside likes. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but here, you can do something and not get a like or a retweet, and it can still make you feel good. And people need to remember that, and we need to have spaces to do that, where we're not scrolling to see if somebody likes something. It's our own private thing that we created that just makes us happy. And while it doesn't solve the commercial problems, I think Foundry will solve some of those human issues.
I want to speak to the marketing thing because I did a gigantic festival, and we needed to let the community know, and we needed to onboard them, and that was a heavy lift. We needed to onboard them into brand new technology. They weren't in the VR space. A lot of them weren't even gamers, and bring them in. And it's a heavy lift. Did we spend a lot of money on marketing? No, we didn't. We used community. We empowered people to be ambassadors. We taught the ambassadors. We had the ambassadors go into the community and share the knowledge. And that level of community building is what everyone is going to have to shift to for marketing purposes. Traditional marketing isn't really going to work in a digital space. I think to bring people in, you're like bringing people into your home. You're trying to tell people to come to your store. And you're going to have to do that a little differently. So we're going to have to pivot from traditional marketing of just putting out a shingle and having people show up to building communities around your services and around what you're presenting to the world and who you want to interact with.
And two other points to add on to that are, maybe there's a double-edged sword effect here when you're talking about going custom but not having that community, right? I can do so much more though when I'm going custom. Like, could you have won an Augie Award had you tried to do the same kind of stuff on AltSpace? Like, I think there's a lot of people that, as great as AltSpace is at building that community, being able to actually manipulate that environment is still a challenge because of the way they have to scale. They don't have that capability just baked in. And that's the same across a lot of the major spatial computing like free platforms. But that's the journey that you went on is the same journey that I have a lot of customers going on, where they actually start in a free platform with something very basic, where they build a community, and then when they feel like they've had critical mass, then they say, hey, it's time for me to actually move over, and now let's build out the rest of my roadmap in a custom environment, right? So from a space of building out that POC, or just very, very roughly testing a concept, like there's a place and there's a strategy where you can use both of those to great effect.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I know lots of communities who have done that. They start their initial community building on a platform, and then they're like, okay, now it's time to migrate into our own. I know together with Trip, which was called Evolve VR, when we came into AltSpace, and they became quickly family with us. They are also looking at the same solution of it's time. They're on Engage, VR Chat, and Rec Room now. So they're on like 3 different platforms. And the community is somewhat bifurcated across 3 different platforms. And they want to bring, because it's called Together with Trip, they want to bring everybody together. So I know they're working on a solution too.
You can make a pretty good comparison to social media and having social media accounts versus having an email list for your business. So your email list is yours that you can take anywhere, no matter what happens to these other platforms, you still have this email list. And so it might even be worth considering using or starting out on one of these existing platforms and then basically using those as a stepping off point into your custom environment.
Sorry, just real quick. I'm not a developer. I'm a creative. I'm not a programmer. I don't build worlds. But I'm wondering what you guys think about Web3. Is it too limited?
Oh my, Web3.
I have opinion on Web3. I have opinions.
Lots of opinions.
I have lots of opinions about Web3. So for me, we have this, you know, the world that is Metaverse. I'm using this word because we don't have another one. Spatial computing or whatever. And then Web3 is the commerce section of it. Unfortunately, Web3 is not interoperable with it yet. But if you think of internet's this big word, and then you have the e-commerce, which, you know, PayPal and all the ways in which we buy things online. And that's just a section of it. So I feel like Web3 is going to be the e-commerce section of spatial computing once we figure out how to integrate them all together. We're going to have to buy and sell stuff online.
What does that mean for creatives?
It will ultimately be the way that they buy and sell stuff, but it's not there yet. It's sort of its own little pocket that's not connected to our three-dimensional world.
Yeah, I think for us, or at least for me personally, I think that when Web3, crypto, blockchain, there's a lot of really good ideas there, and it's inevitable that some amount of it will be really, really common in the future. That being said, at this precise moment, probably 98% of the Web3 projects are complete bullshit, and we don't know which are the 2% and which are the 98%. And so it's like, it's one of those things where in the future it'll be inevitable and ubiquitous and common, and it makes so much sense. But right now, this particular coin, this particular NFT project, this particular blockchain, the most probable scenario is it's complete and utter bullshit.
And they're all walled gardens.
Yeah, as well.
May I respectfully disagree?
All right.
Not that there's some elements there, like 98% of them probably don't offer a ton of value, but I see Web3 in the same sense that I see AI. Right? It's it's a tool. It's a thing that we can use to affect in the right situation. And the problem is, and this is not the problem for just Web3, it's the problem for general spatial computing. It's the problem for even AI in some cases, is that if we're not using the thing that's actually solving a need, it's just a solution without a problem, then we generate noise. And when we generate noise, we miss expectations, and people start to be skeptical. So I think it's really critical that there are some really great use cases. I think Will, who's part of Sia Partners out in the audience, has built an amazing Web3 solution that takes climate change information and basically builds a report on the blockchain for a company, right? Like, and dynamic NFTs can change their display based on how a company is performing with carbon neutralization goals. That is incredible. That's a great use for Web3 because it's a certificate of authenticity that says I have obtained this type of goal or metric regarding my carbon neutralization goals, and that's the type of thing we need to see more of, not a cryptocurrency broker, right? Like, you don't need to see. I don't necessarily need to see another like Onyx right now in Decentraland because I don't know what I'm going to do there. But when there is a need that's doing real good in the real world, that to me is a clear value chain between the technology and solving a problem.
And I like these two viewpoints. And one of the things that concerns me is we all are somewhat experts up here. And when we want to introduce people that maybe are on that digital divide, either because they don't have a way to access those resources and they're a creative, or they haven't spent a lot of time in this space, they are very vulnerable to charlatans. They are very vulnerable to not realizing that I've put all my assets in on Altspace, and then they're gone because I didn't know they were going to close down, and I put my life there. And I think that there's a really important responsibility for those of us in the industry to realize that we need to be taking care of each other. And I think they gave their honest opinion because they want to protect people. Right? And I think you gave your honest opinion because you want to help people also, and to understand. And there's a huge difference between what, there's all of the knowledge in the world is out there, and all of the misinformation in the world is out there. And how do you sort through that? And just to give one more plug for your guys' company, Foundry, safe spaces are our homes. And when we build our own worlds, then we're not always being sold something, be it on Web3, and we're not always, even if it's something good, we can make our own choices about, it doesn't always, it can be a gift, it doesn't have to be a barter, right? And to that end, because we have 24 seconds left, please join virtualworldsociety.org. I have chocolate, and that's the end of our time.